The vineyards of the Moselle Valley. This is where the grapes ripen for the famous Moselle wine. And it was here that the idea to create the world's most unique gourmet event, Winemakers' Dinners in the British Virgin Islands, was born. It started with the realization that the climate of the British Virgin Islands, the air flavoured with the salt of the Caribbean, combined with Moselle wines, many of which have high concentrations of residual sugar, creates a new, remarkable quality. Why not then create a new tradition and bring the magnificent Moselle wine to the island's world-famous beaches, untouched since the time of Christopher Columbus? And if great wines are to be brought here, then why only wines from the Moselle Valley? After all, visitors to the British Virgin Islands, perhaps the last true paradise on earth, will most certainly appreciate the whole range of wonderful wines from the remarkable vineyards of the world. And if great wines are to be brought to the British Virgin Islands, why not present them in harmony with superb gastronomic specialities prepared by chefs from the world's most famous hotels? How simple. All that was needed was to ask the world's best winemakers and the world's finest chefs. The reputation of the British Virgin Islands is so remarkable that just attending the event was payment enough for the top winemakers and chefs. And the chance to enjoy the winemakers' dinners, accompanied by famous wines served by the winemakers themselves, was so unique that those who could afford to stay on the British Virgin Islands were willing to pay thousands of dollars to take part in this feast of gastronomy and wine lovers, a welcome contribution to charity events for the inhabitants of the island. Then all that was needed was to transport the wine to Hamburg, load it in a container, load the container full of gems onto an ocean-bound ship, transfer the container to a smaller boat heading for the British Virgin Islands, coordinate the arrivals of winemakers and chefs, and store the wine in an air-conditioned storeroom. But not just wine, also plates and glasses for hundreds of guests, bearing the emblem "On Her Majesty's Service," the logo of the company belonging to one of the key organisers of the winemakers' dinners, Martin Dindosh. That's what it looked like behind the scenes, which those dining on the finest places in the British Virgin Islands had no inkling of. All week, precisely according to schedule, cars and then boats took the wine encased in ice in transport crates to the islands where the dinners took place. In order for those attending the winemakers' dinners to have the chance of reaching the places ordinary tourists can never set foot in, the organisers transported boxes of wine and chose sets of wine according to the tasting menu, transferring and loading and shipping and transporting exclusive bottles to the most exclusive private islands in the Caribbean. And this is how the last-minute arrangements with the winemakers and chefs looked before the entire gastronomic feast could begin. event couldn't begin before the arrival of Wilhelm Haag, one of the most successful winemakers in the Moselle region, whose winemaking finesse and secrets are being used and developed by his two sons in each of their equally famous vineyards, Weingut Fritz Haag and Schloss Liese.
We have a big dinner tonight, so we know all of you who are here, so we will be counting.
Sir Richard Branson opened his private Necker Island for the unique winemaker's gastronomic dinners. Lunch was served on his beach, dinner was served in his house. The truth of the matter is, his island can be hired for the sum of $50,000 a day, and the minimum period is 1 week. Otherwise, stars such as Madonna and others come here at Sir Richard's invitation. Those who've had the fortune of winning a ticket for lunch and dinner at Sir Richard's will certainly never forget it. Another magical island where the winemakers' dinners took place, Peter Island, features a luxury hotel for rich clients. The dinners were held in the most luxurious villa on the island, known as the Falcon's Nest. The third island, which is virtually inaccessible, is Guana Island, whose private owner kindly opened his own house for the dinners. And while the rich society enjoyed the combination of food and wine, the owners of the world-famous vineyards poured their jewels. Bernhard Kirsten from Weingut Kirsten, Pio Boffa from the Pio Cesare vineyard, Jorge Serodio Borges and his wife from the Quinta do Passadouro vineyards, Manuel Muga Peña from Bodegas Muga, John Priest from the Etude vineyards, Wilhelm Haag, Nestor of both vineyards of his two sons, Weingut Fritz Haag and Weingut Schloss Liese. Starting a world-famous gastronomic and wine event is not an easy matter these days. And even though the charitable idea of Martin Dindosh and Ajit Matthew George seemed slightly crazy at the beginning, the first 2 years of the winemakers' dinners have proved that it was a good idea. An idea that has become reality, thanks to the enthusiasm and professionalism of world chefs and winemakers and other collaborators and journalists. And now it's possible to say that not only has a new tradition been born, but there's also greater awareness of the beautiful British Virgin Islands. We look forward to seeing you again for some great food combined with some great wine.